Because this is one of the most abused, in my opinion, abused terms in our culture. Awliyaa, awliya, the people that are friends of Allah. We use this term in our culture for, in Urdu they say bahut pahunchi bhi personality, bahut pahunche hue log hain. In other words, they've got some high status. They are so close to Allah. They're like on the 150th floor. You live in the basement. They're way more connected to Allah than you are. So man, you can never reach their level, right? Those are the awliya of Allah. So when they walk in, you should just humble yourself, and you should, run to get their whatever divine wisdom they have to drop on you, right? So listen to how Allah describes awliya Allah, and this is what I'll conclude my khutbah with today. Allah Azza wa Jal says, and I'll get to the ayah at the end. This is ayah number 62 and 63 of Surah Yunus, right? But I'm going to start a little bit further back and briefly translate so you can see what the argument being built here is by Allah Azza wa Jal. So first he talks about the Quran. Very famous ayah, I've talked about it before. Ya ayyuhan nas qad ja'akum maw'izatun min rabbikum wa shifaa'un lima fi sudur. Humanity, people, listen up. A counsel has come to you from your master, a healing for what lies inside the hearts. Wa hudan wa rahma lil mu'minin, and a guidance and a mercy and a loving care for believers. Meaning the Quran is there to heal you directly. You don't need someone else to heal your heart. You don't need someone else to cure you of your diseases. Allah has given you His word directly. You have direct access to it. You don't need anybody else. قُلْ بِفَضْلِ اللَّهِ وَبِرَحْمَتِهِ. Tell them by the favor of Allah alone and by His loving care alone. فَبِذَلِكَ فَلْيَفْرَحُوا. Because of that they should be overjoyed. وَخَيْرٌ مِّمَّا يَجْمَعُونَ. It is better than anything that they gather. قُلْ. Tell them أَرَأَيْتُم مَّا أَنزَلَ اللَّهُ لَكُم مِّن رِزْقٍ. Have you observed what Allah has sent down to you of all kinds of rizq? Meaning food, clothing, money. This is all rizq in our life. Have you ever thought about the rizq Allah has sent down to you? فَجَعَلْتُم مِّنْهُ حَلَالًا وَحَرَامًا وَحَلَالًا. And you made up your own versions of haram and halal for it? How dare you? Allah provided you, and you come up with your own rules? What is Allah? Allah first mentioned Quran, His revelation. Then He said, how dare you make up your own rules, right? What's He telling us? If you ever want to figure out what's halal and haram, where do you go? You go to Allah's word. You don't go somebody else is defining for you what you should and shouldn't do. What is halal for you and what's not haram? What's haram for you? قُلْ اللَّهُ أَذِنَ لَكُمْ أَمْ عَلَى اللَّهِ تَفْتَرُونَ. Did Allah authorize you? Ask them, did Allah authorize you? Or are you making these things up yourself? These people, I've even seen TV shows in Muslim countries, TV shows. People call it, I'm having a problem with my uncle. He keeps this, that, the other. He's giving me a really hard time. He's not giving me my share in the inheritance. What should I do? He says, hold on. Read this ayah 43 times while standing on a chair on one leg, facing the window in the east. Your uncle will die. What do you guys come up with this stuff? Maybe I'm exaggerating just a little bit, but might as well. Tell him to do the hokey pokey and your problems will get solved. You're coming up with all kinds of made up prescriptions for what is right for you, what is wrong for you. I mean, they'll even tell them, stop eating chicken. Your marriage is falling because you're eating chicken. What? So this thing is being critiqued, and he says, "Ma dhannu alladhina yaftaruna 'ala Allahi al-kadhib yawm al-qiyamah." What are going to be the thoughts of those who made up these lies against Allah on Resurrection Day? Inna Allaha ladhu fadlin 'ala an-nas walakinna aktharahum la yashkurun. I love this part of the ayah. He says, Allah has possessed a great favor for all people. Allah has given so much favor to people, but people aren't grateful. Allah did you such a huge favor to you that He spoke to you directly. You don't need to go through someone to talk to Allah. He spoke to you directly. That entire scheme of religion as a means of control and manipulation got destroyed by the word of Allah. And here you are going back to that? You aren't even grateful for what you've been given. وَمَا تَكُونُوا فِي شَأْنٍ وَمَا تَتْلُوا مِنْ قُرْآنٍ وَلَا تَعْمَلُونَ مِنْ عَمَلٍ إِلَّا كُنَّا عَلَيْكُمْ شُهُودًا. SubhanAllah. He tells the Prophet ﷺ first, and whatever situation you find yourself in, whatever Quran you recite, and then he turns to all of us and says, and whatever, you have never done any deed of any kind. There's not a single act you've ever done except that we've been a witness over you. We've been watching over you. No saint is watching over you. No sheikh is watching over you. Allah is watching over you before anyone else. إِنَّا كُنَّا عَلَيْكُمْ شُهُدًا إِذْ تُفِيضُونَ فِيهِ. When you're deeply immersed in that act. وَمَا يَعْزُبُ عَنْ رَبِّكَ مِثْقَالِ ذَرَّةٍ فِي الْأَرْضِ وَلَا فِي السَّمَاءِ وَلَا أَصْغَرَ مِنْ ذَلِكَ وَلَا أَكْبَرَ إِلَّا فِي كِتَابٍ مُبِينٍ. There's nothing in the skies and the earth, in the earth and the skies. There's not a deed, of even the worth of a microscopic dot, or even something smaller or bigger, except it never gets overlooked by Allah. It's not like Allah didn't notice it, now I need to go to someone else to figure out what to do. Everything is under Allah's observation. Then he says, Ala inna awliya Allahi la khawfun alayhim wa la hum yahzanun alladhina amanu wa kanu yattaqun. So simple. How do I become a wali of Allah? Well, here's a 1,000-step process. No, in the Quran, it's not a 1,000-step process. It's a 2-step process. He says, you had better know the friends of Allah, the protective friends of Allah. They will have no fear on them. They will not be sad. How do I become a friend of Allah? Simple. الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَكَانُوا يَتَّقُونَ. They came to the faith. They came to believe in Allah and His Messenger and His revelations, and then they continuously, كَانَ يَتَّقِي كَانُوا يَتَّقُونَ كَانَ plus مضارع, continuous. They kept on engaging in taqwa. They kept on being mindful of Allah. They became mindful of Allah when they could have cheated at work. They became mindful of Allah when they could have lied about something. They became mindful of Allah when they guarded their eyes. They became mindful of Allah when they held back from saying something terrible. They became mindful of Allah when they chose not to backbite against somebody. They became mindful of Allah when they could have responded with an insult and they responded with kindness instead. They became mindful of Allah over and over and over. These are the people that are the friends of Allah. And these people could be wearing a t-shirt. They don't have to have a turban on. These people could, be a high school kid. They don't have to have a white beard. They could be the awliya of Allah. Allah did not put a high, holy, sacred standard for what does it mean to be Allah's friend. He made it so fundamental and simple, and that is the revolution of Islam. That is actually revolutionary. Anybody can be the friend of Allah with meeting some very basic requirements. الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَكَانُوا يَتَّقُونَ. There is no additional requirements. لَهُمُ الْبُشْرَى فِي الْحَيَاةِ الدُّنْيَا وَفِي الْآخِرَةِ. These people will have good news in this life and in the next life. Done. There's no further requirements. Iman and taqwa. And what did I tell you about Iman and taqwa? Only you can know where you stand. Only I can know where I stand. Nobody else can judge that for us. So I pray we don't become victims to, popifying and creating, artificial sacredness and supporting that kind of artificial sacredness. We should benefit from people that know more than us. We should learn from scholars, learn from people that have better character than we do, learn from their manners, learn from their adab. All of that should continue. But not for a single moment should we consider anyone in a place where we assume they have a higher taqwa than the rest of us. This is not what we do for ourselves, and we don't do this for others because it leads to many, many, many problems. And it takes us away from the actual spirit and message of the Quran. May Allah Azza wa Jalla make us the kinds of thinkers and the kinds of muttaqeen and the kinds of believers that Allah wants us to be in light of His word.